Good evening, family. Good evening. Welcome to the 6th episode of Sidewalk Talk. We're coming to Netflix soon. Just watch out, right? It is the 6th episode of Sidewalk Talk. Welcome, good evening. So Sidewalk Talk is an online platform, right, where we have real talk about the streets of Newark, New Jersey to gain insight, clarify misconceptions, and get a call to action from frontline workers on the streets of Newark, New Jersey, right? So we gain insight by having nuanced conversations and unpacking truths that are not often discussed, right? We also look to clarify misconceptions about groups of people who are often misunderstood or unheard based on assumptions about their lives. And then we also try to lift up the work of local organizations because Newark, New Jersey is on fire. If you don't know the work we're doing here, then I guess you're living under a rock because there is amazing work that is happening here. Newark Forward, #Believer, organizations and frontline workers are doing amazing work. And so we try to lift up that work that they're doing, but also get a call to action. Also get a call to action from those who know best, which are the folks that are working in the trenches doing the work, right? So we want to call to action. No offense to meetings and emails, but it's the too many meetings and emails. We on to action, family. It's action time. So we get the call to action from the folks who know best, right? So I am your host, Aaliyah Berry. There may be some of you who don't necessarily know who I am. So let me take this opportunity to introduce myself. So I'm a licensed social worker here in Newark. I have 20 years experience serving ages 0 to 60. So a variety of settings. I've been in daycares and schools and after school programs and summer camps, group home shelters, correctional facilities. I've worked in a variety of different settings with a variety of different kinds of people. But I'm also a community-based social worker. So what that means to me is social work and this work out here is definitely a lifestyle. Right? It doesn't always happen 9 to 5. It doesn't always happen within the four walls of an agency. This work out here happens all the time on a regular. And so that is community based for me. So oftentimes I find myself in baby showers and graduations, but also unfortunately at sentencing hearings and funerals, goal setting on the sidewalk with young people and getting hugs at a red light. So that's kind of where I'm coming from and how I'm coming in regards to my lens. I currently work as a consultant with Seeds and Berries, where I do program design, training, and direct clinical services in schools, nonprofits, and government facilities. So you can keep in touch with me and follow my work. Here's Seeds and Berries on Facebook and Instagram. You can follow me, Aaliyah Berry, on LinkedIn and find out more about my services on my website at seedsandberries.com. The YouTube channel, if you have missed this episode live, right? Or you just found out about Sidewalk Talk and you are trying to see what other kinds of episodes, 6 episodes, what are the other 5 about? Well, if you would like to go check in with the other 5 episodes, then go like and subscribe to Seeds and Berries YouTube channel and you can watch some of those other episodes. So that is enough about me. I want to get into quickly, just a little bit of housekeeping, right? So like, tag, and share this live stream. Like, tag, and share this live stream. So liking and loving as we go, right, is just engagement. Like it's an opportunity for you guys to kind of let myself and my guests know how you're feeling throughout the conversation. So it helps us to not feel in a room by ourselves. So liking and loving and engaging is how you do that. But then also you can tag people. So you can tag folks in the comment section where you are able to bring other people into the conversation. So if you know somebody that you feel would benefit from the conversation tonight, tag them and then they'll be able to join us. And then the last thing is to share. There are going to be so many diamonds and jewels and gems being dropped here tonight. We want to be able to share this message for impact. Share this message for impact. The further the message goes, the more ears that it hears, the more ears that hear it, that's impact right there. And then the last thing is comment. We can see your comments and we want to be able to, for you to join the conversation. You can put questions in there. You can put comments. You can add and contribute to this conversation. So definitely continue to comment in the comment section. So tonight's topic, right? I first will just say that Sidewalk Talk is celebrating and honoring Black History Month, right? But these episodes that are happening within Black History Month, this is not People of Color Month, nor is it Black and Brown Month, right? So the things that we are discussing this month in these episodes are things that are specific to the Black community, Black people, and the Black experience. So we just need to put that up front, right? Number two is Black history we know is American history. And we need to honor, learn, and live Black history 365 days a year. But there's some extra classes going on this month, right? There's some extra knowledge and extra, just extra learning that we can do this month. And so that's what we're trying to do here on Sidewalk Talk. So the topic tonight is Black Power, radical social transformation, and movement building. That's a heavy topic right there, family. That is a heavy, heavy topic, and my guest is a heavy weight that can surely handle that topic. And I will say, so how I do Sidewalk Talk is I come up with a topic, and then I go through my mental Rolodex, right? And I think about what player in my city is good, or what organization is good to be able to speak on that topic, who has the expertise on that topic. And so when I thought about strategy around Black Power, well, family, my guest is the chairman of People's Organization for Progress, Larry Hamm. Drum roll, drum roll. I'm not that advanced yet, but there's the drum roll, right? The snapping it up. So Larry Hamm is my guest tonight to be able to speak on this topic, and he is more than qualified, right? He has over 49 years experience organizing. That is marinated wisdom, and that's not just meeting or talking about it. That's doing it. That's on the sidewalk, blood, sweat, and tears shed, right? To be able to really commit to the work that needs to be done. So I myself, he didn't even know this, but when I myself have, been watching him and marching with him over 10 years. And so he's had a profound impact on me as a young activist and my development, making me want to read more. Okay, y'all. Larry Hamm will make you want to read more. I want to grow up to be like him, the walking encyclopedia, family. Those of you who know him, and he is humble. He's shaking his head in my green room right now. But I have watched this man cite books, paragraphs, and page numbers to support what he's saying on Broad and Market on a microphone. That makes me want to read more. That makes me want to be smarter. That makes me want to be more knowledgeable about the things we're talking about. I say the walking encyclopedia piece. I say that to say that class is in session. Class is in session. I need y'all to get your notebooks out, your pens ready, okay? Past Sidewalk Talks, it's been more conversational, right? My guest has everything that needs to be said on tonight. So I am interviewing tonight. That's what I'm doing. My own schooling has failed me. So I'm here learning with y'all. Let's get your notebooks ready. Everybody ready? Let's go. Hello, sir. Hello.
Good evening, Sister Alia. Thank you for having me as a guest tonight.
Yes, thank you so much for being here. It is an honor, as I've already shared. It is an honor. So let's get right into it. Please introduce yourself to the audience. I did my own personal little heartfelt introduction, but please introduce yourself to the audience.
Well, as you said, I'm Larry Hamm, Lawrence Hamm. I'm chairman of the People's Organization for Progress, a grassroots organization that struggles for racial, social, economic justice and peace. Our organization is observing its 38th anniversary. And as you said, I have been on this path for liberation for 49 years. I will actually observe my 50th anniversary on March 24th. That's the day I led a walkout, a march, and a sit-in when I was a student leader at Arts High School, when I was the leader of the student government here. That was March 24th, 1971. And I count that as my social justice birthday. My real birthday, the day I was born was December 24th, but the day I really entered the struggle was March 24th, 1971.
Okay, so that's your second birthday. That's a different kind of birth right there. That was
Well, I think all of us need to try to figure out when our social
yes,
justice birthday is.
yes.
The day that we began to understand that we were part of something bigger than ourselves, that we were part of the struggle for Black liberation. And we should celebrate that day. In
Absolutely.
fact, I posted on Facebook recently that I wanted all of those who were still living, who were in that walkout with us in 1971, to join me in front of Arts High School on March 24th, so that we could talk about it just a little bit. And I've expanded that invitation to really include everybody that was part of a student movement in the Newark Public Schools. There have been many student leaders that have come out of the Newark Public Schools, and there have been many protests led by different students since I led that one in 1971.
Absolutely. So we're gonna. So what if we, we're gonna start kind of at the beginning. It's a sidewalk talk that's dedicated to Black history. This episode dedicated to Black history. But what does Black History / Black History Month? What does that mean to you?
Well, it is an important way for us to observe our history and commemorate our history. Of course, we shouldn't do it 1 month of the year. We should do it all year round. But there's nothing wrong with having a month where we really get focused in a laser-like way on our history and try to get more of our people to learn about their history and study their history. As we commemorate this Black History Month, let us always remember the name of Carter G. Woodson. Carter G. Woodson is the brother, the scholar, the intellectual giant that founded Black History Month. Everybody should read his book, The Miseducation of the Negro, which he wrote in 1926. But when you read that book, you'll think he's talking about Black people today. Carter G. Woodson, people always say, well, they cheated us. They gave us the shortest month of the year, but nobody gave us this month. Carter Woodson, after he received his PhD from Harvard University, he was the second Black person to do so. The first was W.E.B. Du Bois, whose birthday is this week. In fact, his birthday is February 23rd. We could do a whole program on W.E.B. Du Bois, but I would urge those who can to read Du Bois's work. There's a pretty good 2-volume set of the selected works of W.E.B. Du Bois. I urge people to read that, particularly the second volume, which deals with those things he wrote in the latter years of his life. But Carter G. Woodson, again, wrote The Miseducation of the Negro. After getting his PhD, he returned home and he began to write a column for Black newspaper. This was at the turn of the century. And at that time, many people couldn't read. So what would happen is that people would take Carter G. Woodson's column, they would take it to church. And when church service was over, the person who could read would stand up and read the column to the entire congregation. It was out of this practice that Carter G. Woodson got the idea for Negro History Week. And he said it in the second week of February, because on that week you had the birthdays of Abraham Lincoln and Frederick Douglass. Abraham Lincoln, February 12th, and February 14th, Valentine's Day, was Frederick Douglass's birthday, the day that he took as his birthday, because he didn't really know the day he was born on, because he was enslaved. And you know the story, Frederick Douglass had to fight his own master, had to fight for his life, his own master, who happened to also be his father, and he overcame his master, and he escaped to slavery. You can read this in the narrative of the life of Frederick Douglass. So he chose it on the week of those two birthdays because those two were giants in one of the most important episodes of American history, and that was the Civil War. You know, we had been enslaved in the Western Hemisphere for 400 years. The first enslaved Africans brought to the Caribbean, and then enslaved Africans were brought to the colonies. And for centuries, we were enslaved. People prayed for an end to slavery. They petitioned for an end to slavery. They had conventions to call for an end to slavery. They rebelled against slavery. But ultimately, it took a civil war to end slavery. It was the greatest war. When I say great, I'm talking about dimensions. It was the most cataclysmic war this country ever fought. Nearly 1 million Americans died in the Civil War. That's more than all Americans who died in World Wars I, II, Vietnam, and Korea combined. That's what it took to end slavery. It took men on the battlefield with rifles, with cannons, with horses, and fighting for their lives. And ultimately, we overcame the Confederacy and broke the back of the slave aristocracy. But that couldn't happen before Lincoln, who was himself a white supremacist, had to be convinced that he had to involve in this war the persons who had the greatest interest in prosecuting the war to the end. Harriet Tubman, Frederick Douglass, Thaddeus Stevens, Charles Sumner, who were part of the radical Republicans, told Lincoln that he needed to put arms in the hands of Black men if he wanted to win this war, because initially the Union wasn't winning the war. So Lincoln issued the Emancipation Proclamation. And the Emancipation Proclamation did not free all slaves. It only freed those who were in the states of the Confederacy and who could escape to Union lines and join the Union Army. And 220,000 Black men answered the call. 180,000 in the Union forces, in the Union Army, and the rest in the other branches of the Union forces. And that's what turned the war. And the irony of all this is that we really don't observe the contribution that these Black soldiers made to our freedom today. I mean, they literally gave their lives. 60,000 died on the battlefield. 100,000 were wounded. So Woodson took the second week of February and proclaimed Negro History Week. And over time, it was evolved into Negro History Month and then Black History Month. And then here in the state of New Jersey, Black History Month was first officially observed when State Senator Winona Lipman, who was the first Black woman elected to the state Senate of the state of New Jersey, put forward a resolution that was passed by the legislature officially observing Black History Month. That was in 1971. That's when it was officially observed here in New Jersey. So it's very important to know this history because people have misconceptions about Black History Month. Nobody gave it to us. We had to fight for it. We are fighting for our history even to this day. I'm old enough to remember when we didn't have any Black history courses. There was no Black History Month celebration. You couldn't bring the red, black, and green flag to school. You get put out of class if you did such a thing. The only Black history I got when I was coming up was George Washington Carver and Crispus Attucks. Crispus Attucks, the first person to die, this is what they tell us, the first person to die in the American Revolution, and George Washington Carver, who developed so many products from the peanuts.
Right.
We had to walk out of my school to get Black studies. And we called for third world studies. We wanted Black studies, but we also wanted to learn the history of the whole Asia, Africa, and Latin America. We wanted to know all that history that had been excluded. And people are still fighting today. I mean, we in the 21st century. And I just got a call the other day for people to come to a board meeting
Right.
in
So,
Newark
yes.
to fight for the implementation of the Amistad Act.
Right. So let's go right there. And I'm going to go out of order. I'm following your lead, Chairman, right? So schools was definitely something we wanted to address and dive deep into. And these episodes and the Black History episode specifically, we are kind of going from past to present to future, back to past. What does present look like? And so that's fine.
That's right.
Yeah. And so when it comes to schools,
the separation of past, present, and future is an artificial construct.
well, and on especially on these topics. So you just mentioned the Amistad Act. So what does schools? I will start here. Like, what does schools and school curriculum have to do with power? And then how has it changed over the years, and what should it look like now? And explain to the audience even what the Amistad Act is, because yes, I was there when you got the call to action about the Amistad Act, and that's another thing. So talk about schools and power and how that looks.
Well, it's very important for people to know the history of the Black Power movement. You know, a lot of us celebrate Black history, but we really don't know a lot about our history here in this country. We know some dates, we know some places, we know some famous people, but it's so important that we study our history. You know, I would recommend some things to people, some real easy reading, some stuff that I read, Reparations for Beginners. That's one book, illustrated. Slavery for Beginners, that's illustrated, and Black History for Beginners. Those are easy reading books that we can sit down and read with our families, with our children. And you know, we don't have to wait for the school system to teach our children Black history. We can teach Black history in our homes. We can have our own bookcase with our own little library and have our children sit down and our grandchildren sit down and read to us, you know, when it's convenient for everyone. So we have to study our history regardless of what's done in schools. So we had a Black Power movement. I first heard about Black Power when I was a student at Arts High School in 1967. That was after the rebellion. We don't call it the Newark riots. We call it a rebellion because it was a collective response. It was Black people's collective response to years, decades, centuries of racist oppression. And we call it a rebellion because it happened all over the country. There wasn't just a rebellion in Newark. Between 1960 and 1972, there were over 1,000 urban rebellions in the United States. In fact, in New Jersey, Newark wasn't even the first one. Jersey City had an uprising before Newark. Every major city in New Jersey had a rebellion. And you can read about it in Governor Hughes. He was governor at the time. He put together a commission to try to find out why people were rebelling. It's called Governor Hughes' Blue Ribbon Commission on Urban Disturbances in the state of New Jersey. Just look it up. It'll be easy to find. But the point is, there were rebellions going on across the country. And this is documented in Robert Allen's book, Black Awakening in Capitalist America. So we had a Black Power movement. And my definition of Black Power is the application of our collective strength and effort to impact the political, economic, and social development of our community. And Black Power will always be a valid concept as long as Black people are racially oppressed and denied the right of self-determination. See, Newark in the 1960s was an apartheid city, just like South Africa. Majority Black population controlled by white minority. And the titular head of that political group was Hugh Adonisio, who was the mayor of Newark in 1967. And people rose up and they said Black Power, a slogan that was made popular by Stokely Carmichael, but I think in this country really enunciated first by a fellow named Willie Ricks during a civil rights march down south. Richard Wright also wrote a book in the 50s called Black Power. It was the story of Kwame Nkrumah's ascension to power in Ghana. So the idea had been around for a long time, but it really became popularized in the 60s. And so we were very much influenced by people like Malcolm X. By the way, it's fortuitous that we have this discussion tonight because tomorrow is the anniversary of the assassination of Malcolm X. But Malcolm, at that time, trying to define Black nationalism, said Black nationalism is Black people having control over institutions in our community, over the political institutions, economic institutions, social institutions, and educational institutions. So this is where, during the 60s, this is why there was a heavy emphasis on community control of our schools. And some of the fiercest political struggles that broke out across the country after the rebellions were struggles for community control over our schools. Because we understood that if we didn't have control of our schools, we could never have Black history. We would keep demanding it, and the apartheid structure would keep denying it. So if you went back to the 1960s, the mid-1960s, Newark had a majority Black population. It had one Black person on the school board. One on the school board. So what happened? In 1966, Ken Gibson ran for mayor the first time and lost. In 1967, there was the rebellion. And literally, days after the rebellion was the first Black Power conference in Newark. And many of the national leaders, Stokely Carmichael, H.Rap Brown, Malak Karanga, they all came to this Black Power conference that was chaired by Miri Farah. Literally, to this day, I don't know how they did it, because we were under military occupation. It wasn't just a rebellion. The National Guard had come in here and locked stuff down. But the biggest militants in the country were downtown Newark having a Black Power conference. That was in 1967. In 1968, there was a Black Power convention at West Kenny Junior High School. The building is still there, the same building, Black Power Convention in 1968. And in 1969, there was a Black Power Convention. In 1969, there was a Black and Puerto Rican convention. And out of that convention came the Community's Choice Team. Some names everybody knows: Ken Gibson for mayor, Sharp James for South Ward Council, Dennis Westbrooks. And after that convention in 69, Gibson won in 1970. And we got our first Black mayor in Newark, right? And so Gibson appoints Black people to the school board, but it didn't become a majority Black until myself and maybe one other board member were appointed to the school board on July 1st, 1971. That was one of the first major accomplishments of the Gibson administration. And that was one of the platforms that came out of the Black and Puerto Rican Convention of 1969. And I urge people to read these books: Inside Newark, by Bob Kervin, Unfinished Agenda by Junius Williams, and Nation Within a Nation by Kamosi Woodard. Those books really discuss the development of Black power in Newark. That is the transition from apartheid, white minority rule, to Black majority rule, which we have now had 41 years of. So one of the first platform planks to be fulfilled was to appoint Black members to the Newark Board of Education, who would then use their power to hire Black principals, of which there were only a few. I can't even say a handful, a few Black principals. There were so few Black teachers that when I was a student at South 17th Street School, I did not have one Black teacher as a regular teacher in school. The only Black instructor I had was Mrs. King, who was a speech therapist, because I had a speech impediment as a child. You wouldn't guess that now, right? Because I can't stop talking, right? But we had hardly any Black teachers, anybody. It was so dire that there was an organization called ONE, Organization of Negro Educators, led by a guy named Fred Means, whose sole purpose was to make the Newark board hire Black teachers. So now people walk around in schools, they see Black principals, vice principals, Black teachers, but I can tell you over time that I lived through, that this didn't exist.
Like living through the shift, because so I was a Newark public school teacher, and I was also a school social worker in the West Kinney building, right? And those young people, nor those staff, like when you just said that, it made me feel sad, because if some of the young people that I worked with in there had known that building carried so much legacy and history in the walls of that building, that could have impacted their view on the world, their self-esteem, how they look at their city, how they look at their building. And yet that's not being taught.
Right. It's not being taught because the teachers don't know.
And I didn't either. Exactly.
The teachers can't teach what they don't know.
Exactly.
And this is a problem.
Exactly.
How teachers are trained and how those teachers are hired, and they're really not equipped to deal with our children.
Because, like, for example, so the Amistad Act, right? More specifically, like, so when I was an 8th grade teacher, I threw out the textbook they gave me. And I wrote 9 months of Black history curriculum. And yes, I had to go learn in order to bring that to my students. And I'm still not obviously an expert, but I had to go seek out that knowledge for myself to bring to my students. When it comes to the Amistad Act, that is Black history curriculum that is shaped and written by experts, and is it given to the teachers and then they just teach kind of what it is? Like, how does the Amistad Act play out on the ground?
Well, first of all, it's important to remember.
Or does it just enforce
what the Amistad Act is. Amistad Act is a piece of legislation that was authored by then Assemblyman Bill Payne, William Payne, and Assemblyman Craig Stanley. They were sponsor and co-sponsor of the Amistad Act, which was passed by the New Jersey State Legislature in 2003. And it mandated that Black history be taught in all social studies classes, curricula, from kindergarten through 12th grade, in all schools.
It was the mandate.
In the state of New Jersey.
Right.
It's a mandate.
Right.
It's a requirement. In the state of New Jersey, there are 600 school districts. And the number of school districts that have actually implemented Amistad is probably less than 25 out of 600 school districts. And in the districts where it is implemented, we're still struggling to get a curriculum that actually accurately reflects our history.
Right.
So this again is part of the historical struggle for community control that came out of the Black Power movement. And you have to understand that. People have to, community control dropped from the sky. It was a demand of the Black Power movement because people like Malcolm X told us that Black power is Black people's control over the institutions in our community. And here's the irony. Amistad was passed in 2003. This is 2021. We 18 years later trying to get most of the schools to implement it and trying to get other school districts not to pervert it, because there are people who take Amistad and turn it into some kind of catch-all multicultural curriculum. Amistad is supposed to teach Black history, the history of Black people in antiquity, before enslavement, during the period of enslavement, during the period of Jim Crow, and during the contemporary era and up to the present day. It's supposed to be about Black history, and they've updated Amistad, so it's not only supposed to be about history, it's supposed to be about Black people's contributions for all areas of academic endeavor. So if I'm in a chemistry class or a science class, I should also learn about Black people's contribution to chemistry and science and biology. We're not going to segregate Black history. We're not going to have apartheid Black history. And it's supposed to be for all students, not just Black students. It's supposed to be for all students, but it's supposed to be about Black history. So Black people are still struggling for community control, and the struggle for Black studies is part and parcel of that struggle for community control, not only in the public schools, but in the universities, in the academies, in academia. Most people don't know that there weren't Black studies programs before 1966. The first Black studies program at a college, which I believe was San Francisco State University, was 1966. And Black students had to march, sit in, take over buildings to force colleges to have Black studies programs. So all these Black professors walking around here that are teaching Black studies courses, don't act like you got there on your own. If it hadn't been for students whose names you don't even know, including students at Rutgers University in Newark that took over the buildings at Rutgers in 1968, they helped create these Black studies programs that exist today. When Frederick Douglass said that if there is no struggle, there is no progress. Power concedes, nothing without a demand.
Right.
It never did and it never will. And that is true for everything, every social benefit that we have in this country, Black people had to struggle and fight for, including Black studies and Black history and the Amistad Act.
Right. So that's good. That's just so much clarity about where it's been, where it is, that the Amistad Act is the mandate, right? And that it was done in 2003. And even up to the other night, you still getting a call to action to discuss the fidelity to the Amistad Act and making sure that it's not being watered down by other things. So you just mentioned progress. right? And
Right.
so the question kind of is, when you look at progress and the fact that you are so knowledgeable about the past, and you can pick which leaders, right? Because you'll probably pick them out, this one, this one, this one. But people often do ask, would the leaders of our past be proud of where we are? And so I'm asking you, because I guess it would depend on what leader, it would depend on what area, right? Malcolm would say they won't even acknowledge the knife is there, whether you took the knife out a couple inches or not. Is the knife even exist? Right? So like,
Mm-hmm.
you can just speak on that, and have like, would they be proud of where the community is in 2021?
Well, first of all, the leaders wouldn't be satisfied.
Yeah, no.
They would tell us we haven't achieved our goals. But our leaders, our recognized leaders, like Malcolm, like Dr. King, like Du Bois, like Paul Robeson, like Fannie Lou Hamer, like Ella Baker, like Diane Nash, like Ida B. Wells, Mary McLeod Bethune, and Harriet Tubman, they would be proud of their people. They would not be walking around here talking bad about us. They would be proud of us. They would tell us not to be satisfied, and they would tell us to keep fighting. But I'm telling you, I am proud to be a descendant of African people in the 21st century. We have overcome all forms of adversity. We shouldn't even be here. We should be like extinct, like there should be a coin with our head on it, like there once was the Negro people. But we overcame centuries of enslavement. We rebelled from the beginning to the end. We never gave in. Read Herbert Aptheker's slave rebellions in colonial America. Most people don't even know that there were over 400 recorded slave rebellions, not to mention the many that were unrecorded. 400 just in the American colony, not even counting the Caribbean, Mexico, and Latin America, where slavery was in every one of the countries. Just in the colonies. We fought on the shores of Africa. We fought on the slave ships. We fought here on these shores. We fought on the plantation, and it culminated in the Civil War. And I bet you there's not one church that knows where some Black Civil War soldiers are buried and go put some flowers there every year. But the point I'm trying to make to answer your question is that those leaders who have joined the ancestors, they would tell us not to be satisfied. They would tell us not to be asleep, that they would tell us to continue to fight with all of our strength and all of our effort. But they would tell us to be proud of ourselves and to be proud of our people and proud of what we have accomplished. Because what we have accomplished is monumental. In the annals of history, what we have contributed is monumental. We are great people, and we will be a greater people. But this little stuff that we're dealing with now, I know people talk about, well, what about the crime? What about this? Yes, those are problems. No doubt. Those are problems. But that's grains of sand in the desert, in the Sahara Desert of time. Our sojourn on earth is the story of a great people. It rivals anything that you can read in any religious text, bar none, about any other people. We overcame the worst, everything that they could throw at us, and we're still here, and we're still fighting back. And we're going to fight back with every breath that we have in our bodies.
Absolutely.
I'm sorry.
No, you're good. No, you're good. And also the pieces. No,
People say,
there is no apology. Chairman, no, there's no apology at all. But even the pieces about the rebellion, right, and the passion behind the fight and the struggle, that is another piece that I find is not a little bit, I'm going to go back to schools, but that is not taught in schools either. And so sometimes this defeatist narrative, right? And these movies that come out, not the recent movie, but like movies that just come out about slavery and beating down and the defeatist. But to your point, so many stories of rebellion and fighting back and with every breath in your body, right? Like, and that story is important to pass down to the next generation. The fighting
That's
back
right.
story. Like, yeah.
Right. But this is why we need educators who are aware.
Yes.
Educators
Yes.
like Bashir Akinyeye,
Yes.
who is at Newark High School,
Yep.
who is the stalwart
Yep.
defender of Black studies.
Yes, he is. Yes, he is.
Like brother Bashir, like Principal Kafele,
Yep.
Baruti Kafele,
Yep.
and others. And I'm sure there's sisters like Sister Leah Owens and others. I can't name everybody. So
those three you named right there, though. Yes, those three right there.
We have giants walking among us.
Yes.
And we need teachers who are not just going to accept whatever the department chairman gives them. Many people don't know it. I'm a licensed social studies teacher. When I graduated from Princeton, I not only have my degree in politics, but I had a license to teach social studies. I was in the urban education program. You know where I did my student practicum? At Weequahic High School.
Oh, wow.
Under a Black man named Sanford Williams. That brother used to catch hell. They tried to fire him at every turn because he refused to stick to just what they gave him to teach. If you were in his class, you got to meet almost every living leader that was still walking the earth.
Right.
He did everything to expose his students to our history and our culture. So he was my supervisor when I was doing my practicum. And I remember the department chairman at that time calling me into his office and saying, "Why are you showing all these Black history things?" Like I had got the Roots series and I was showing it to my students. They didn't want me to show film.
Yes.
Show Black history film.
Right.
And
so it takes a dedication and determination. Like, I'm going to do this regardless of what the system, the department chair, the principal. Sometimes now I was teaching special ed, so they ain't really care. As long as chairs weren't being thrown, they didn't really care what I was teaching. But sometimes we have the opportunity to close the door. Like, you close the classroom door and you're still going to teach what you want to teach, and then put certain stuff up on the wall to make certain people happy. But at the end of the day, like, that experience with you and your students. So you mentioned Bashir, Principal Kafele, Leah Owens, Dr. Leah Owens. Yes, we're so proud of her, right? So, those giants in the work and making sure that the movement is moving, right? Now, there is one thing that you wanted to discuss here on tonight, and so bringing it in to internally, right? So there's things, there's systems, there's history, there's from the outside looking in the work, right? Now, to bring it to our living room, and internally, do you feel that community organizers are as unified as we need to be? And if not, why not? Was there a shift? And how do we internally challenge and resolve this? Not externally, and not letting other people come in and trying to tell us how to do us, right? But like internally, that was something that you shared that you wanted to touch on, is how as we as community organizers are or are not working well together.
Well, we're doing okay. It's not like we don't have any unity.
No,
have when I go around to speak, in different cities and stuff, and people have these impressions, like on the issue of violence, right? They're like, how come people in Newark are speaking out on violence?
What?
Now that's obviously, yes, that's obviously a person who doesn't know what's going on, who
That's
doesn't
right.
even read the newspapers.
Facts.
Because we have in Newark, the Newark Anti-Violence
Of
Coalition
course.
that has been on the forefront. We have the Enough is Enough organization.
Yes.
We have the Street Doctor.
Yeah.
We have the Brick City Police,
Yes.
Brick
Yes.
City Police Collective.
Yeah.
We and don't get offended if I don't mention them all, but we have
No,
many
but
organizations
yes.
in Newark that fight the violence. We have organizations that people say, well, why aren't you doing more to control the economics of the community? Well, obviously they don't know about reform, which has been preaching Black economic development for the past 30 something years. And we're close to reform, and we're close to the Anti-Violence Coalition and other organizations. So there are efforts at coalition building. And this is very important in the movement. There are two things that we have to do regarding movement building. One, we have to strengthen and build up our individual organization. And two, we must build coalitions and alliances among those organizations. No one organization is going to have all the answers for our movement.
Right.
Not POC, not anybody else.
Yes.
We all have a piece of the puzzle, and we all got to bring our pieces together, put them together to make the big picture and the strategy for how we move ahead. We've had historical coalitions during the time that I've been involved. When I came, as I said, when I came up during the Black Power movement, under the tutelage of Amir Baraka, the father of the current mayor, Ras Baraka, he had an organization called CFUN, Committee for a Unified Newark, which was part of a national organization called the Congress of African People. But many people don't know that CFUN had a community advisory council that had several dozen organizations as part of that community advisory council. Amir Baraka said till the day he left here that we had to build a united front, that it was going to take a united front. In the 80s, there was the Rainbow Coalition. Many people don't remember the coalition we formed called the Malcolm X Commemoration Coalition. We brought together over 100 organizations, including organizations like Africa Newark under Sister Jenna Misa, Barbara King. We brought together 115 organizations to have annual commemorations of Malcolm X's birthday, at which his widow, Betty Jabaz, always attended. In fact, the last one she attended 2 weeks before her untimely death. We had the Million Man March Coalition. Little New Jersey had one of the largest contingents to the Million Man March out of the 50 states because we put together the New Jersey Million Man March Coalition. And out of that came the women in support of the Million Man March, who continued to do institution building after the Million Man March and the Million Women's March. We had a statewide coalition against police brutality, and I could go on and on and on. But this process of coalition building is an ongoing thing. It's like farming. You got to plant, you got to harvest, and you got to plant again. And you keep, until the coalition gets bigger and bigger. So movement building, we have to take our little tiny organizations, make them into big organizations. Then we got to take those organizations and link them up so that we can do what is ultimately needed, and that's transform this whole system.
Yes. Yes. And I find that not only in the world of community organizing, but it's sidewalk talk, real talk, right? In the nonprofit world, in this city, that's something that we struggle with, which is working in silos, right? And so nonprofits are chasing the same dollars in silos. And so the Brick City Peace Collective is an example of bringing those people together, bringing them to one table, and then us collectively, moving in a direction towards the mission. Because the working in silos is just ineffective, right? It won't move anybody anywhere working in silos. So thank you.
That's
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
That's right. I agree with that. I agree with that. And the thing, because I see the hours running away from us already. But one of the things I want to mention before we wind up is that Black power will always be a valid concept as long as Black people are the victims of racial oppression. However, we realized by the mid-1970s that Black power, while necessary, also had its limitations. Early in the movement, we thought that if we just changed the people in the power structure from white to Black, everything would be all right. And then we learned it was much more complex than that. And then we thought that, well, it was the character of the leaders. We were looking at everything through the prism of Africa, right? And we were looking at our movement more as a colonial struggle. So, in the colonial struggle, you overthrow the colonial oppressor, you elect your own people, then you find out they don't work out, so we call that what? Neo-colonialism. So we were calling people neo-colonialism, but ultimately we came to understand, and you'll understand this if you read the works, the writings of Malcolm X and Martin Luther King. I really urge everybody, tomorrow's the anniversary of Malcolm. Don't just read Malcolm X speech. That's good. There's nothing wrong with Malcolm X speech. But that's not going to give you the essence of Malcolm's political thought. You have to read what Malcolm said himself. Malcolm X Speaks is one book. By Any Means Necessary, not just a speech, there's a book of speeches by that title, By Any Means Necessary. Malcolm X on Afro-American history. Malcolm X Speaks to Young. The last speeches of Malcolm X. In fact, I would say people need to read the speeches that Malcolm gave in 1964 and 1965 if you really want to know what Malcolm's basic political concepts were at that time. At the time, he formed the Muslim Cooperative, and after that, formed the Organization of Afro-American Unity. Likewise, people need to read Dr. King. It's not enough just to have a King holiday and close the schools. If the children don't know what King stood for, what difference does it make? King wrote 6 books: Measure of a Man, Stride Toward Freedom, Strength to Love, Why We Can't Wait, Where Do We Go From Here, Chaos to a Community, and Trumpet of Conscience. I would urge people to read what Dr. King wrote in 1967 and in 1968 when he was killed. And I'm going to tell you something. You'll see a lot of parallels. Malcolm was killed in 65, assassinated. King was assassinated in 68, 3 years later. But by the time King was assassinated, he was saying a lot of stuff very similar to Malcolm X. So it's very easy time to try to play Malcolm and King off from one another. What we're trying to do is synthesize their political thought and trying to apply it to our movement today.
Wait, excuse me 1 second, Chairman. Wait, do you have headphones in?
No, I don't even have headphones.
Because now your voice is sounding a little muffled all of a sudden. Not muffled. We can still hear you, but it doesn't sound like it has been this whole time. We can still hear you though. Oh, it came back. It came back.
It came back. Okay.
Yes, okay.
So just to finish up, both Malcolm and King said at the end of their lives that we must struggle for radical social transformation. At the end of their lives, both of them were anti-capitalist and anti-imperialist. This is very important because some of us, many of us, are not even where they were 50 years ago in 1968 and in 1965. And if we miss that, we miss the most important thing. We got to change the whole system. We can't just replace white people with black people. That's a step. That's a step. But you can't stop there. Because as Dr. King said, we must have a radical redistribution of power and wealth in this country. And he said, quote, there must be a radical transformation of our socioeconomic system. And Malcolm said the same thing. Read the speeches that Malcolm gave at the Audubon in 1964 and in 1965. We need systemic change as well as the other reforms like Black history that we need.
Absolutely. So the last question, right, is that I feel like is kind of answering the question from a systemic macro level. Like, what do you feel are the marching orders and the wisdom for us, even as the younger generation of organizers and activists, right? Systems have to change. This is not about changing people.
Right.
This is not about, this is systems. And it's fighting for systems that we're already trying to put, like Amistad Act was an attempt at a system, but we have to enforce it. So, right?
That's
so,
right.
But on a personal level, right? Elder Larry Hamm, on a personal level, when you feel, and this question really is because when you feel that this thing is so big and sometimes bleak, and there are days that we have out in these streets that are really overwhelming, traumatizing, disturbing, overwhelming. Did I say overwhelming yet? Right? Like these things are big. These things are big. Yes, because sometimes when I look at the macro level stuff, I get overwhelmed, which is why I work on the sidewalk to help people navigate what already is in place, because sometimes that macro level stuff is really overwhelming. My question to you is, on a personal level, what is wisdom that you think we should put in our hearts to carry as we carry this work? What do you wish somebody would have told you to carry in your heart?
I was lucky because I met the people who told me the right thing.
But so then tell us the thing to put in our heart to carry us through when what we're carrying is heavy, sir. Yeah.
I remember when I celebrated my first Kwanzaa. That was in the December of 1971. That was before there was Kwanzaa cards and a Kwanzaa stamp. That was when a small group of people were celebrating Kwanzaa. Kwanzaa was only created in 1966. And thank Amiri Baraka, the Committee for Unified Newark, and the Congress of African People for bringing it to the East Coast, because Maulana Karanga created it on the West Coast. And I remember during that Kwanzaa, and I don't think people do this at other Kwanzaa celebrations, but I believe that Amina Baraka, the wife of Amiri Baraka, at that time, she had a Kwanzaa song. And I don't hear people anywhere else doing this song. And I ain't gonna try and sing it because I'll mess it up. But I remember these words: Sisi Watu, Weusi, Watu Wazuri, Pamoja tu Tashinga. We are Black and beautiful people, and together we will win. Those are the words that have been in my heart for almost 50 years. And they will be there until I die.
The promise to win. The promise to win.
We are
and
Black
together.
and beautiful people.
Yeah.
And together we will win. Together.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I appreciate you, Chairman, so much, so much. This was an honor, right? Like I saw
No, the
on
honor is mine.
some flyer after we arranged this, I saw bullets of what you should do in Black History Month, and one of the bullets said interview an elder. I said, check, I'm already about to do that. Because interviewing you has been an honor, and I just want to, thank you for your sacrificial service. The dedication of your entire life, blood, sweat, and tears shed, for this work, but also always sharing your wisdom, right? Like I've been around you from afar more than 10 years, and you have always shared your wisdom with the masses, whether that's on a sidewalk or a platform or whatever, but just sharing your wisdom. And the last time I shared this with you, but the last time when we were marching for Breonna Taylor, right? And I was marching, by your side, and I just looked at you saying, and I shared this with you, but like saying 23 names of Black people, Black and brown people who have been killed by the police. And we marched all the way to Lincoln Park and then around, and those names, and I just looked at you and I began to shed a tear because I said, if he is still marching all this time later, right? It's because you never gave up. You never gave up. You never will give up. And so like that is the impact it's had on me, is to say yes to my leadership, to step into what I'm supposed to do. And even when this does look bleak, or you're saying another name, like, and you're marching for another person or whatever the case, whatever the work that we're doing, like you never gave up. And so I really, yeah. But also, I also want to give a shout out to Pop, right? Because
That's
also,
right.
yeah, I was on it. I
That's
got
right.
you, right? But I'm just saying the personal impact that you had on me, right? But also Pop as an organization has had an impact on me as well. Marching in front of the federal building, right? The Lincoln Memorial, like just the impact that Pop has had in regards to shutting down the streets. The people, the men and women that you lead and that you work with, that organization, I just want to take this opportunity to shout them out as well, because that is blood, sweat, and tears shed, and for decades as well. And so a lot of times us as workers out here on the front lines, sometimes we don't feel seen or appreciated, and we don't do it to be seen or appreciated. But sometimes this platform is an opportunity to see the work that you and Pop do, and to appreciate it, to honor it, to celebrate it. And so we honor and celebrate the work that you and Pop do. So I just wanted to say that, yeah.
I thank you for saying that, because that's the most important thing.
Yes. Yes.
Anything that I have done is made possible by the members of the People's Organization for Progress. People wouldn't even know my name if there wasn't a Pop. And the lesson here is, this is one of the reasons why you have to be part of an organization. Because an organization can reinforce you in those moments of doubt. You think I don't have doubt?
You don't act like it. You don't act like it.
Every other day I have doubt, but because I have comrades who help hold me up, who literally have kept me alive. And that's not an exaggeration.
Yeah.
When I was almost killed in an auto accident in 2014, the members of Pop literally helped keep me from dying and helped me to overcome what I faced at that time. So we need to be in organizations to get that reinforcement from comrades who are on the front line with you. Like, what's the difference between a comrade and a friend? The difference is that a comrade is someone who is with you in the battle. You can have friends, but they're not on the front line. You might not even be friends with the comrade.
that's
But let me tell you, that's the person that's gonna help you get through the fight.
facts.
You know, that's the person that's gonna help you get through the fight. And it's so important that within organizations we reinforce each other and not destroy each other. Sometimes there's a tendency within an organization for people to be so critical and so self-critical that we end up tearing each other down. And the organization loses its effectiveness. We must have criticism and self-criticism, but not to the point that we destroy the person. The point of medicine is to heal the patient, not to kill the patient. You know, so there's a dialectic between leadership and followership. They can't exist without each other. If you're so terrible a leader that you chase away all the members, you're not gonna have an organization. But if the members are so, how can I say, overly critical of their leadership, they will lose the benefit of that leadership because they'll lose those leaders. The two have to work together, right. Leaders and followers. They're dialectically linked. They can't exist without each other. And navigating that contradiction is the key to longevity of an organization. POP has been in existence for 38 years. And I think one of the reasons is because we have been able to navigate that contradiction. Now, we've had our downtimes. We've had moments when POP almost went out of existence. But because there were a few members who refused to let that happen, we brought it back. We planted more seeds and raised up more plants, more members, and we keep going. And that's really the challenge for us in the future. Because after 38 years, the truth is, we should have thousands of members, of active members, but we don't. And this is one of the challenges that faces our organization today, to get more members, to get more young members, and to create new leaders who will continue this struggle after us. But because as you can see from my gray hair, I won't be here forever. I have more years behind me than I have in front of me. So I have to create new leaders to continue this struggle.
Yeah.
We all have to do that.
Absolutely. And that thing right there, that's even an episode topic in itself, is training up successors, because it is a disservice to not train up the next generation to take the place of. Because then when our leaders, are no longer here, if they didn't train up, then we're in trouble. So so thank you. Even speaking about the organization itself, and like I said, I salute you and POP as an organization, and you all are doing a great job, and we honor the sacrifice and dedication and commitment. So thank you, Chairman Larry Hamm, for coming on tonight.
Thank you.
I appreciate you, and we will talk soon.
All right. Power to the people.
All power to the people. Wow, family, that was awesome. I don't have too many words, but it is about a call to action, right? So coalition building, right? Read a book. Read many books, right? Go back. He listed books, right? He was a whole library just saying, read this book for that and read that book for this. And let's really, become educated about what it is. If you're passionate about schools, get involved in in enforcing the Amistad Act, because that is a call to action that is current day. There is some things going on with that movement forward, some movement back. There's just some things with the Amistad Act. So do get involved with that. Bring Black history into your home. Let's not wait on the school at all, because if that's a whole system that needs to be, revamped and pressed, then he mentioned some books that we can bring into the home. The kids are already at home. You're already homeschooling, right? Bring home some curriculum. And if you need help, go to POP, right? So join an organization. And if it's POP, then you can join or support by reaching out to 973-801-0001. If it's a different organization that you're like, well, look, I'm really passionate about this. I'm really passionate about that. I'm really passionate about violence. I'm really passionate about, schools. I'm passionate about community organizing. There is an organization for you. Yes, you join an organization. And even during COVID, organizations are doing Zoom meetings, and the work is still happening. We're still calling the Supreme Court to get, civilian review boards with subpoena power. You can do that during COVID, okay? During quarantine, we can still do that. We even took the streets over the summer. So I'm just saying the work doesn't stop because of COVID. Join an organization. And let's just say you're like, and I've said this in Sidewalk Talk, I'm not the type to clean up blood off the sidewalks. Now, POP doesn't necessarily do that, but I'm just saying that as a lane. Right? I'm not really with the sidewalk, the marching, I don't know how to do that. I don't feel comfortable, whatever the case may be. Guess what? Donate to an organization. The revolution has a budget, family. The revolution has a budget. And so sometimes it is, you're able to donate to an organization to push their work, right? So if you don't feel comfortable on the sidewalk, find an organization that you want to help fund. And so POP is open to that as well. Again, call 973-801-0001. So those are some of the call to action. Play your part. I've said that on all these Sidewalk Talk episodes. Play your part. Find your lane, whatever your lane is. And if you need help finding your lane, hit me up. Hit one of my guests up. Hit us up and we'll help you find your lane, because it does take a collective to be able to move this work. So if you're wondering what your part is, if you're wondering what your lane is, let's figure it out. You can continue to find me, Seeds and Berries, on Facebook, on Instagram. You can find me on LinkedIn, Aaliyah Berry. You can find out more about my services as a consultant, a social work consultant, at seedsandberries.com. If you missed this episode and you want to go back, again, you watch it live and then go back with your notepad and write down the books and the points and go back and take notes. Watch it again and take the notes. This will be on YouTube tomorrow on Seeds and Berries YouTube channel. And you can also check out some of the previous episodes. We've had a pretty dope array of guests that have come on with the last 5 episodes on the YouTube channel. So that is where you can find me and find out some of my work. The next episode, when I will see you next. So I will see you next on March 6th at 8 p.m. March, we're celebrating Women's Month, right? And so we will be having a dynamic guest come on. I'm not going to tell you who it is, but stay tuned. She is an expert in serving girls. And so we are going to talk about serving girls and young women and how to really serve them, pour into them, empower them, raise them up on the sidewalk, right? And so that is what we'll be talking about on March 6th, 8 p.m. Follow Seeds and Berries. You'll get all the updates about Sidewalk Talk. And again, my name is Aaliyah Berry, and thank you for your support. Have a good night.